and welcome back to another episode of the Employee to Boss podcast. Today, we're talking all about taxes. And before you start yawning and being like, no, I don't want to, this is a really good episode. So I speak with Samara Andrews, the owner of FYE Finance. So even if you're like me and think that numbers are hard and taxes are scary, that's even more of a reason to listen to this episode, because Samara breaks down exactly what entrepreneurs need to know about taxes, and with tax season coming up, she shares some tips on how to spend less on taxes, how to save your money, and things like that. She tells us how taxes can be sexy. I love that. I love that so much. So I connected with Samara a while ago. I was actually on her podcast. But a little bit more about Samara. So she's the founder and CEO of FYE Finance, is an MBA Finance graduate, a business accountant, and recently she left corporate America, where she gained over 17 years of accounting and finance experience, and now she works with small businesses and entrepreneurs to help them with their tax planning, help them around tax season, and really just help them make strategic moves to save money. One thing that she was really missing in her life when she was in corporate America was the education part of being able to educate different people on taxes. Like I said, she thinks and she says taxes are sexy. And when she talks about it, like, I get what she means. Financial security is sexy. Being able to plan for things and being secure in all of this, sexy. So I get what she means after she explains it. So this episode has really actionable tips, and really Samara is just such an expert in this, and the way she explains it makes so much sense. So let's get right into this episode with Samara Andrews. Hey Samara, thanks so much for joining us on the Employee to Boss podcast.
Yes, thank you so much for having me, Haley.
I am so thankful that you squoze this episode into your busy tax season, because taxes is one of those things that I, never really focused on when I was in corporate. And now that I'm an entrepreneur, I have to plan for it months in advance. Like,
That's right.
crazy. But I remember when I connected with you, you always talk about how, like, taxes is sexier, and it's not
Yeah,
sexy, but you make it sexy. So that always stood out to me, and I was like, I love that.
right. I'm so glad that you remember that. I use that line a lot, and people are like, whatever, Smar, but it's always going to be sexy to me.
Yeah, I love that. So if you want to start off by introducing yourself and telling us all about you and your business.
Yeah, so I'm Samara Andrews. I am the CEO of FI Finance, and we are a full service accounting firm. And as a tax strategist, I specialize in helping businesses that are growing, but also established firms, right? So we want to help those business owners plan for taxes, save more of their hard earned money, and then finally pay themselves.
Awesome. I love that. So, how did you really get started with your business? Like, what are some of the steps that you took? Because you used to work in the corporate world, right?
Correct. Yes, correct. So in corporate America, because I'm an accountant by trade, we're very strategic people, right? So type A personality, we're always planning, we're always strategizing. There is no, jump out of the airplane and try to build a parachute on the way down. Like we just don't operate like that. So with that being said, I was very strategic of how I approached me exiting corporate America. I knew that I wanted a lifestyle that was a little more flexible. I am a mother, so I have children. And so I wanted to have that kind of time where I can spend with my kids and not me always missing like every game and whatever. So I had to plan for it. So the first thing that I did was I joined some platforms where you can get work, right? So if you think about like a thumbtack, right? Or you think about gurus, right? So these are platforms where you can solicit your service to other business owners. So you can grow your business organically there. You can also, grow it with word of mouth, right? So you may have a lot of friends or family. For me, because I am an accountant, people naturally came to me to get their taxes done. Like they would always ask me first, hey, do you know anybody to do taxes or do you do taxes? And so I grew my business that way as well. And I continued to do it as a side hustle until I grew the business to a point where it could at least sustain my bills. So then once the business was able to sustain my bills, then I started working on my exit plan to leave corporate America.
That's awesome. I've interviewed a lot of people who kind of just jump into entrepreneurship, so I really appreciate the whole point of view of like doing it very strategically. And
Yeah.
so when you started, you said that it was a lot of, word of mouth, friends and family.
Mhm.
How did you tell them all that you were doing your own side hustle or starting your own business? Was it social media that you were promoting on, or was it literally just like, hey, I can do your taxes for you?
Yeah, so it actually did start out as a, hey, I could do your taxes for you.
Yeah.
But I did find out real quickly, right, that I could use the tools that are out there, a lot of them which are free, because you don't have to pay for a Facebook page, you don't have to pay for an IG page. But, those things like Thumbtack, you do have to pay for, right? But the return on investment may be a lot larger on those type platforms because you're constantly being fed leads. Whereas Facebook and Instagram, people I feel like go to those platforms to be entertained. Very rarely do I get a big influx of people coming from those platforms. It happens, so I'm not going to deny it. Don't knock it, all right? Don't give up on it because I haven't given up on it because it does happen, especially when you start leveraging the tools of using ads on Facebook and Instagram. Like that will definitely get you an influx of people. It's going to get you in front of those people that are already looking for tax services because I'm sure you know how the algorithm works, right? Like the more that you're looking for a thing, it's going to put those ads in front of you. So definitely utilize things like that. But yeah, for me, it definitely was that word of which started on platforms where, I was paying for those leads. And then when you do an amazing job, like that's why I tell everybody, like treat every client like they're your only client. And I promise you, you'll continue to grow because when you treat every client like that, that client's going to go tell another client and then so forth and so forth. And honestly, when I look at the bulk of my client, like 75% of my client base is from word of mouth.
Wow. That's awesome. That's awesome. And that is so true. Treating every client like they're your only client, I think is one of the best ways to go through business. So that's a great tip.
Yep.
So before we get into like tips about taxes, because I know you love the education parts, I would love to. I was looking on your website and you were saying that like being in corporate was really like stopping you from doing that education part. So when you were doing your corporate exit strategy and starting to promote on social media or these other sites that you were talking about, like, did you already know who you wanted to work with, like small businesses, entrepreneurs, things like that?
Yeah, so if you visit my website, I have this line, right, where I'm very passionate about working with the small businesses because what I feel like happens is the reason why small business owners and the average Joe taxpayer even don't take advantage of a lot of the tax strategies that are out there is because they don't know about them. So you have these large businesses which get away with paying little to no taxes because they have a whole team of tax accountant attorneys, right, that are dedicated to ensuring that they're paying as little taxes as possible. But unfortunately, small business owners don't have a team that is doing that for them. And so that's where FI Finance was born and created. So I wanted to fill the gap. I wanted to be that go between so I can serve as the guide, as the subject matter expert in the area of tax strategy so that it can be something that is afforded also to a small business owner who is trying to do the same thing as these large businesses are. It's not that we're trying to evade taxes, right? We all know that that's illegal, but we definitely want to play place ourselves in a place where we have tax avoidance, right? That we're paying the least amount of taxes possible based on using strategy.
Mm, I love that. Yeah, every time I do my taxes, I think I'm gonna go to prison. So I'm excited for the next part where you educate us on the importance of doing your taxes and really like how it happens.
Yeah, and it is so funny that you say that because like every single client that I connect with, like that's the first thing. I just don't want to go to jail. And I'm like, I don't either. So believe me, I'm not gonna do anything to jeopardize like me or you. Okay. So keep that in mind first and foremost, especially as an enrolled agent with the Internal Revenue Service, because like, somebody could complain on me and then I lose my license. So definitely know that, yeah, we're not doing anything illegal here. It's all tax strategies that are within the tax code. It's just that a lot of people are not aware of them. And honestly, Haley, like that's what we've seen. Every client that we've connected with, we've seen that when we do an audit of their previous year tax returns, because that's one of the things that I ask for. I want to see what your prior year tax return was. Okay. And when I do that audit, we usually see that year over year, clients have had their taxes done incorrectly. So we've had clients where we've amended their tax return for them and it actually got them back money because they overpaid because they were done incorrectly. We've even seen clients that have been audited and we've helped them through an audit. We've helped them provide the information that was needed to the Internal Revenue Service and got them out of the audit. So it's definitely, it's out there. People are afraid of the Internal Revenue Service. A lot of people are not doing their taxes correctly. A lot of people are going to other accountants who are not doing their taxes correctly. So it's definitely a need, I feel like, for the services that we provide because we do approach it from a very strategic standpoint. And we're really big on educating because once we make the client whole, then we show them, okay, this is what we did. And going forward, this is what you need to do in order to stay compliant.
Do you want to start growing your business rapidly in a really fun way? Do you want to increase your visibility and profits? I have just the thing for you. My course, Great Guesting: How to Grow Your Business Through Being a Podcast Guest, is now available, and it's guaranteed to get you on podcasts. Do you want to connect with more clients, share your story, make stronger connections, and grow your audience? But do you find that you're second guessing yourself, are indecisive on a topic because you're into so many things, and thinking, is this even possible? You'll love this step-by-step guide on how to be a podcast guest. We go over 6 lessons that are knowing your story, narrowing down the topic, finding podcasts to be on, setting up your audio, preparing to record, and of course, marketing, because that's what I'm all about. Being a guest can be fun, but if you don't have a plan to go with it, you're really just spending the hour talking. You're not moving your business forward, and that's exactly what this course is designed to teach you. You can find this course on my website at Espresso Podcast Production, and I guarantee you that you will be a guest on podcasts in no time. Yeah, that's great advice. And do you have maybe some tips on at what point should someone like hire someone like you to do their taxes?
Yeah. So what I tell people is there are like 3 main players that you want to get with pretty early on in your business. One is a lawyer because you want to make sure that your business is structured properly, right? And then 2, it would be somebody like me for sure, right? And then you also want to get a finance person if you are, in this endeavor where you're trying to really, really grow. So when you partner with a lawyer to make sure you're structured right, and then you partner with an accountant, you want to make sure that your accountant has you compliant in how you should be reporting revenues, when you should be reporting revenues. And that accountant is also going to make sure that you are, well, hopefully that accountant will make sure that you are using strategies to make sure that you are reporting your revenues in the most tax advantageous way, right? That's the word that I like to use a lot. So I'm all about tax advantageous approaches, meaning that I want to pay as little as possible by leveraging the tax code. So there are a lot of things out there. Like, for instance, are you ready for some tips? I'm sorry, I don't want to.
Yeah, I would
Okay.
love them.
Yep, absolutely. So there's been a big push in recent years about everybody needs to be an S corp. Oh, be an S corp. Oh, be an S corp. I'm sure you've heard it or seen it somewhere. And so I tell clients that there is a time to be an S corp, and then there is a time to like let's wait it out and see, what's what. So there's pros and cons about becoming an S corp, but I'm just going to give you some of the high level benefits, right? So when you are an S corp, what you are seen is as a regarded entity. Okay, so that means that the IRS sees your business separate from yourself. Now, what that does is on your personal tax return, it eliminates the self employment tax. Okay, so when you do your tax return at the end of the year and you're just an LLC, you're being taxed on any wages that you earn from your 9 to 5 job. And then you're also being taxed on your income from your side hustle, right? And then if you notice, they also have this self employment tax that they assess on you. So when you become an S Corp, it alleviates that self employment tax. It takes it out of the picture. And in some cases, it's saving you about 9.2% in taxes. Okay. So on that income. So that's one big reason why people are like, "Ooh, become an S corp." Now, when you become an S corp, there's some guidelines you got to follow by. As an S corp, you should be paying yourself a salary. So, can your business sustain you for doing that? As an S corp, you definitely should be having meetings. You should be having at least yearly meetings. They have to be recorded in the book. Like people don't understand all of the requirements of becoming an S corp, which is why I don't usually tell small businesses starting out to do that first because there's so many requirements that if you were to be audited, worst case scenario, if you were to be audited, you could get in big trouble, possibly fines if you are not abiding by the rules. Okay. But there is that bonus of the elimination of the self-employment tax. Another big one that small business owners can use is it's called the bonus depreciation rule. Not sure if you ever heard of it. Have you?
I have not.
Okay, this rule is amazing. I use it for my clients that do like rideshare. So if you drive for Uber, right? If you drive, who else that Lyft, right? So if you're using your car as a source of bringing you income, this is a rule for you. I do a lot of clients that also use, right? So I had a client that had a Turo business. She bought a 2022 Chevrolet Tahoe, I believe it was. It's like a $65,000 car.
Mhm.
So because of the bonus depreciation rule, she was able to take just about 100% of the cost of that vehicle as a tax deduction in the year she purchased it.
Wow.
Amazing, right?
That is amazing.
Exactly. And so most people don't know about that rule. You see what I'm saying? So it's
Yeah.
not that you can't do it as a small business. It's not that. It's just that we don't know about it. So you connect with the tax strategist because that tax strategist they know about these things. I know about these things. That's my job,
Yeah.
you
And
know?
you're going to do it in a legal way, which,
Exactly, exactly. It's all above board. It's definitely some requirements that you have to meet, right, in order to take the deduction. And so you want to make sure that whoever you're working with understands what those requirements are and they communicate them to you. But it's definitely a deduction, an easy one, in my opinion, that you can take if you are using your vehicle to generate profit. Yep.
yeah, I love that tip. That's really awesome.
Mhm.
So, to prepare for tax season, I think a lot of entrepreneurs get a little stressed out with like actually recording how much money they make throughout the year. At least I know in the past I have, where I make money from all different sources and all different payment methods, right? And
Mhm.
so, what advice do you have for keeping that all under control?
Yeah, so there are two things that are absolutely important for small businesses to do when they're starting out. One is you want to get a bank account set up. I usually tell my clients to get at least two. So get one account set up for your operating expenses. That's money coming in, money going out. And then get another account set up for your taxes because you absolutely want to plan for taxes. So you want to put money aside every week, every month. And I usually tell my clients to put anywhere between 20 and 30%, depending on what type of entity they are, right? So that's one little tip, right? And so then the next thing that you have to do in order to track that revenue and those expenses, you have to get on an accounting platform. That's going to be the best way to do it. It's going to make life easier for your accountant. It's going to make life easier for you. Because another problem that we see, aside from people not having their taxes done correctly year over year, is people don't know where their money is going, right?
Yeah.
And if you don't know where your money is going, then how can you plan? You can't plan. So you have nothing to base it off of. So I advise you to get on an accounting platform like a QuickBooks. I am a QuickBooks Pro advisor, so that's what I'm going to promote, right? But there are other platforms out there as well. But QuickBooks has platform that can grow with you, which is another reason why I love it. So you can get a QuickBooks platform that is what we call a self-employed QuickBooks option. And I want to say it's as cheap as like $10 a month.
Oh, wow.
So definitely there are some options out there for you as a small business owner. But yeah, get out of that Excel spreadsheet and get onto a platform that's going to help you track those expenses and those revenues easy. And it's going to be so much easier for you to prepare for the tax year and give that information to your accountant.
I love that. Do you have a QuickBooks affiliate code or anything like that?
I do, and I'll share it
Awesome.
with you for sure.
Perfect. I'll definitely put that in the show notes. Thank you.
Yes.
So, another thing I wanted to talk to you about is because, taxes is in April, 1 month, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm assuming you get like an influx of clients around that time. For you
Mm-hmm.
and for anyone else who kind of like has this sort of income, situation, how do you plan ahead for like making more money in April than maybe other months?
Yeah, so for me, absolutely. There's a influx. Actually, Haley, if I'm being honest, it's from February up until April. Like I have this influx of money. So this is where a sexy tool comes into place called budgeting, right? And when you start forecasting. So when you are a small business owner, another reason why you need to be on an accounting platform is so that you can see how your revenues are tracked, right? So in corporate America, we call it cyclical businesses, meaning that the business goes up and down. There's ebbs and flows, right? So there's times where the business is operating really good, like think of a construction company. So in the hotter months, oh, they're going to make money. People want to get houses built. They want to, get buildings put up. But in the colder months, maybe not so much, right? So it's really, it behooves them to use things like a budgeting tool or forecasting tool so that even though they're having this influx of money, they're still putting away, right, for their taxes throughout the year at a pace that is like even and consistent, right? And that's what I do. Okay. So even though I have this influx between the months of February to April, like I'm still putting away for taxes throughout the year at an even pace because I know, hey, at the end of the year, that number is going to be relatively the same, right? So I just put aside the same amount every month. So that's how you can plan. But using things like forecasting, using tools like budgeting, which I feel like is very sexy, can definitely help you plan better.
Yeah, I wouldn't use the same word to describe budgeting for me, but I love that.
Listen, at the end of the day, if it's going to help you strategize and it's going to help you give you peace of mind, right? I feel like all of those things are sexy.
You're right. And that's just like a way that I should probably think about it because I love that, honestly. And I think that's super, like, that's why I interview so many people in different industries because, like, that perspective is so different than mine. And I'm wanting to learn different perspectives in entrepreneurship. So, super
Yep.
cool. I would also love to hear about, like, other ways that you educate people. You have your own podcast on your website. It looked like you had tons of resources all about education. Do you want to share some of those with us?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I feel like I miss my calling sometimes because I feel like maybe I should have been a teacher, but full disclosure, I don't really like kids, only on my own kids. So teacher
I
was
feel
not
that.
the
I
route.
feel that. Yep.
Teacher was not the route for me. But I do love educating, right? And so I do that by means of social media. So if you visit like my Facebook, FYE Finance, if you visit Instagram, Finance, you will definitely see a lot of postings around education, around reminders for like due dates and stuff. A lot of the information that I just shared on the podcast, like the bonus depreciation rule and things of that nature, self-employment tax and how to, set up the S corp. I've shared that information on my social media platforms. And I also I have a YouTube channel. So I talk in links about different strategies. I have other guests on too that share like their stories as well and their journey as well too. And then we all tie it back to tax planning because I feel like that is so sexy. So I love educating people through these different avenues, and all of these avenues are free to you, right? As the listener, as a taxpayer. So definitely go out there, watch the videos, get all of the content, and again, definitely use it to your advantage. And for some people, like that's their first introduction to me, right? They want to first, scope me out, see what I'm about. And then they usually make their way over to book a consultation call. And they were like, yeah, I watched a few of your videos and I felt like, oh my goodness, she knows a lot. I can learn more. So here I am. So yeah, we definitely pride ourselves on putting out some good content, some good, reliable, and legal content. Might I want to make sure I add that.
Yep, that's the key
Um,
word, right?
yes, legal. So yeah, definitely visit those avenues. That's how I get the word out, and that's how, I try to continue to educate and give back.
Yeah, thank you for sharing those and thanks for creating all those free resources. I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
that's so amazing. And so for someone who's ready to hire an accountant for taxes or maybe for year-long support, what are some key things that they should look for? Like obviously hiring you, but like what are some other things that they should look for in an accountant? Because like you just said, the legal part is super important. And I think now these days, a lot of people hop on TikTok and they're like, how to do my taxes? And who knows what they're going to get from that. So, what are some key things people should look for before hiring an accountant?
Yeah, absolutely. So I like to say, like, when I do my consultations, there's a two-way interview, right? I'm interviewing the client to see if they're going to be a good fit for me, but the client is also interviewing me. So some things that the client should definitely look out for is how educated does their accountant seem to be, right? And that can be in the form of their credentials, right? So most accountants, they can be a CPA. I myself, I'm an enrolled agent, which I insert myself as the tax expert. And that's how the Internal Revenue Service sees me as well, because I can represent you if you are audited or if you have to appear before the Internal Revenue Service. So you definitely want to look for people who seem to have more than just, I do tax returns, okay? So go out, look at their LinkedIn, right? See what their background looks like. And then that will give you a good understanding of, hey, can this person really help me? Do I feel like this person has the experience and the educational background to handle my particular situation or need? So that's one thing. Another thing is definitely ask your accountant what their communication style is and ask them how frequent you will be in communication, right? So I always tell people your accountant is someone who should be just as close to you as your significant other because that person is dealing with your money. So you want to make sure that you have like access to them. I get horror stories all the time from clients that get onboarded with us and they're like, my accountant ghosted me during tax season. I'm like, what? Like that's the one time of the year that you absolutely don't want your accountant to ghost you, right? You need them during tax season. So make sure that you're asking that question as a potential client. Hey, like, Tell me about your communication setup. Like, how often are we going to communicate? Are we going to have quarterly meetings? Will you explain to me my financial statements? How do we meet concerning taxes? How often will we meet? Will you review the tax return with me? I'm saying all of these things because these are all things that we absolutely offer, right? And so one of our pillars is communication because we understand how important it is, not only for us, but also for the client, right? And so we have 3 areas that we absolutely communicate with our client, and we communicate with our clients as frequently as a monthly basis, some on weekly basis. So it's really important that you ask that up front because you want to make sure that you're not going to be ghosted and you're going to be able to get in contact with them when you need them.
Yeah, that would be terrifying being ghosted by your accountant. When should people start working with an accountant, like for their taxes? Like, is it as early as February, like you mentioned? Or, I mean, we're recording today on March 20th, like a month out from tax day. Is this too late? Or, like, what is the actual timeline for that?
Yeah, so it really depends on what you want to do, right? So there's tax prep and then there's tax planning.
Mhm.
Okay. I do both. So tax preparation is just me filing, the act of me preparing all of your documents so that I can file them with the Internal Revenue Service or your state agencies, right? That's tax preparation. Now I'm going to do my due diligence to make sure that you are taking advantage of all the credits and deductions that are afforded to you, but there's not a lot of planning that I can do when I'm given some forms in March and you say, hey, I need these filed by April, right? Now, tax planning is something that is done year round. Okay, because what we're doing with tax planning is we're taking your prior year tax return and we're saying, okay, Haley, last year you made $100,000, but guess what? You paid over $20,000 in taxes. We can't let that happen anymore. So let's implement these strategies so that we can reduce your tax bill year over year. So I need you to do X, Y, and Z. I need you to have this set up by January, have this set up by February, and then we're going to continue to work it throughout the year. And then when come next year, when we go to file your taxes before April, let's see how our strategies worked out, right? That's tax planning. And I usually meet with my tax planning clients every quarter just to make sure that they're on track with the plan that we implement. And then also included in that tax planning fee, like I also put in the tax prep fee so they don't have to pay me for that. But we've seen some huge wins in doing that. Like I've had clients that have saved as much as $9,000. I had one client that saved as much as $15,000. So there's some huge wins when you approach tax from the planning aspect versus just tax prep.
And that, like, also is key because if you are seeing like you owe $9,000 and you haven't saved any of
Mhm.
your $9,000, that is going to be a stressful moment.
Very much so. Because tax planning, to your point, right? Tax planning is not only looking at how we can reduce that tax bill, but it also is planning to pay something. Like you're gonna have to pay something, right? Like
Yeah.
so yeah, so it's preparing for that. Remember when I talked about setting up those 2 accounts? One was for taxes, and that's the reason why. So like that's another thing that we introduce to the client when they come on as a tax planning client. We were like, oh, we got to get another account because we got to make sure that we're putting aside taxes. And I will say this, like there are two clients that I can think of off the top of my head. At the end of the year, with them not even doing our tax planning from the aspect of strategies, right? But just us estimating their taxes and then putting aside that money, we were within like $100. Like it was amazing. I was like, oh my
Wow.
gosh, let me pat myself on the back. Within $100, that's crazy, right? So definitely it works, right? If you definitely just work at it
Mhm.
throughout the year, but it
Totally.
definitely works.
Totally. I love that. And thank you for sharing those wins. Do you
Mhm.
work with clients all over the United States?
Absolutely. All over the United States. I do not have any international clients. I escaped international accounting when I escaped corporate America. So I,
Well, yeah, because I was thinking like every state is a little bit different with their
yeah,
taxes. I'm in
yeah.
Washington, so we don't have
You don't
income
have income
tax.
tax, right? That's
But
right.
there's other states like California that charge a huge amount of income
Ooh,
tax.
oh my
So,
gosh. Yeah. And again, it goes back to the educational aspect, right? So when a client is connecting with me, not only are they paying for the act of me completing their tax return, but they're also paying for the knowledge that I'm bringing to the table because their expectation is, listen, I should be able to kick my feet up and not worry about it at all. Samara should know and understand the new laws that are coming up in every single state. And Samara should be on top of it. And Samara should definitely file my tax return according to those new laws. And I do, right? I have to keep myself abreast. And I do that by educating myself also right before tax season. Like I do, there's a lot of studying that happens. And then there are also some tools that I utilize in order to make sure that I'm not missing any deductions or strategies or filing of certain forms. To your point, California, oh my gosh. Shout out to all my California listeners. I'm praying for you all. So California is one of those states where way back when, not way back when, but 2018, when they passed the Affordable Care Act, you remember that, yeah?
mhm.
So it was mandatory that you had to have health insurance, right? And if you didn't have health insurance, they were penalizing you. The Internal Revenue Service was, and so were the states. So there were forms that were created called 1095A forms. I think it's A, maybe A, because there's A, B, and C. So don't quote me, but it's a 1095 form. And what that form does is it reports like what your insurance premiums are and if you had insurance coverage for the year. Okay. So I say all that to say this. A lot of states said, I'm going to stop penalizing you if you don't have insurance, right? Once the Internal Revenue Service stopped, some of the states stopped, but not California. Oh no.
Mm.
California says, listen, we still want you. It's still mandatory that you have insurance. So we will continue to issue a penalty if you don't report that 1095A form, right? So it was something that I definitely had to be aware of and look out for my California taxpayers to make sure that I still had that form for them, even though it wasn't something that was mandatory from the Internal Revenue Service, that state still wanted to see it. So
Right.
it's just little things, little nuances like that, that it's helpful to have an expert, a tax expert that is going to be able to look over your return, do your return properly to make sure that you are not, penalized when you had the information and maybe they just didn't know to ask for it.
Totally. Totally. Yeah, that education part that you have is so valuable, and that's totally why people usually outsource. Like,
Hmm.
you could probably figure out your taxes. It's just like what I do. You could edit your own podcast and do all
Right,
that stuff, but by hiring someone like you, it makes it so much easier. So
right, right.
that's amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you think entrepreneurs should know before doing their taxes? Or, maybe if they just finished it, that they should start planning for next year?
Yeah, so definitely the first and foremost thing is plan to pay something, entrepreneurs. Don't just think that, hey, I got all this money coming in, and just because it's coming in tax free, that is going to be the case at the end of the year. Because at the end of the year, if you have a profit, meaning that you received more money than you paid out in expenses, that is a profit, you will have to pay taxes on that. So first and foremost, I tell my entrepreneurs, plan for that because I believe in the saying slow and steady wins the race. So little at a time can add up to a lump sum at the end of the year, and then you're not stressed and trying to get on a plan with the Internal Revenue Service, because the Internal Revenue Service will put you on a payment plan, but guess what they still do? They still assess interest on that outstanding balance during the payment plan. So you don't want to, overpay in interest and penalties because you didn't plan for it. So that's the first and foremost thing that I tell all my entrepreneurs. You're different now, right? Where you were used to working a 9 to 5 and you didn't have to worry about that. And the money was just withheld from your check. Now you have to be that employer, right, for yourself. And you have to withhold that money and make sure you're paying it into the system every quarter. That's another thing. It's not mandatory as an LLC or S Corp or a partnership for you to make quarterly payments into the Internal Revenue Service or your state agency. It's only mandatory if you are a C Corp. However, it is helpful if you do it on a quarterly basis. Because another thing that the Internal Revenue Service started doing was at the end of the year, if your tax liability is over $1,000, they penalize you. They assess a penalty on it because they were like, why didn't you pay us our money throughout the year? Now we're going to penalize you because we had to wait on our money. So,
Oh
so
my
not
God.
only, yeah, so not only are you paying taxes, now they're like, you know what? And since you made us wait for it, there's another penalty.
You're like,
So
cool. Thank you. Thank you. I really needed that one.
So that's what I tell my accounting clients. Like, we give them their quarterly estimates. We tell them the day that they should pay it by, and then give them the links that they should make the payments to. It's a very easy process to do, right? But you definitely want to plan to pay something because you're going to have to pay something if you made a profit. That's what I stand on my soapbox and say to people, like plan for taxes. It's going to happen. Like, two things that are certain in life, taxes and death, right? Like, it's going to happen.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Those are really great tips. I really appreciate you joining me today and sharing all of these super valuable and actionable steps. How can someone connect with you if they want to hire you, learn more about taxes, all of these things?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So you can definitely visit my website, www.fyefinance.com, and then backslash or forward slash, I don't know these things, booking. And then I'll take you straight to my booking page. So all of my consultations are free unless you book a strategy call, which you get like a whole hour of my time. And we talk about whatever tax problem you want to talk about. We create a strategy before you get off the phone. You have actionable items and everything. So we have really good wins with that. Like, a lot of people that take up retirement withdrawals, they usually book those calls because they want to understand, like, what can I do in order to not pay, the penalty on that retirement withdrawal. And there are things you can do, people. So definitely visit the website, www.fyefinance.com/booking. And then that will send you directly to my booking page. You can book an accounting consultation, by discovery call, or a tax consultation.
Awesome. I'll put all of those in the show notes along with your QuickBooks link, the affiliate
Yes.
link.
Yes.
And I would love, this is how I end every episode. I would love it if you could share 3 actionable steps for the audience to take to move forward with their business or their taxes or leaving corporate, whatever you want to challenge them to do. Now's the time.
Yep. So I'm just going to reiterate some steps that I said before. So the one is definitely start tracking your money, right? So the best way for you to continue to be successful as a small business owner is to understand where your money is going. Get on an accounting platform today, okay? No longer will you be using Excel spreadsheets. There's so much room for error, and it can possibly be costly at the end of the year when you try to give that to an accountant. All right. So get on an accounting platform like a QuickBooks. The link will be you said it's going to be in the show notes. Yes. Okay.
Yes, yes.
And then 2, what you need to do is plan for your taxes, y'all. Plan for your taxes. You're going to have to pay them. So start planning prior to April 15th. Okay. So taxes happen every year, right? The filing date is around the same time every year. So start planning as early as January so that you're ready for next year. Okay. So plan for taxes. And then 3, think about your retirement, y'all. As small business owners, I feel like this is the one thing that we don't do well. We think about the now and we're so focused on the now and today that we forget about retirement. And there are a lot of tax strategies that you can use to even plan for your retirement in a way that's tax advantageous. So please think about a retirement. There are a lot of tools out there for small business owners, some that are especially only for small business owners. So things like a SEP IRA, right? Or a solo 401k. You can Google these things and research it some more, but think about your retirement. So those are the 3 things that I'm going to leave as a takeaway. I'll end the show that way.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm going to have you back on for an episode all about retirement because we didn't even touch on that. And that's such an important part, right? So
Absolutely.
I'll
Absolutely.
definitely
I'm
have,
not doing this forever, Haley. I'm not.
oh, I feel that too. I'm like, retirement can't come soon enough. I'm just
Right.
kidding. But awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me. This has been so much fun to connect with you again. And like I said, for the listeners, everything will be down in the show notes. And definitely go connect with Samara. She is so amazing and amazing at what you do too. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Employee to Boss podcast. If you made it to the end of this episode, I hope that you implement the actionable steps from this week's experts so you can get started with your business today. Please rate, review, and subscribe to the Employee to Boss podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. It helps more than you could ever imagine. Remember, a little progress each day leads to big results. We come out with a new episode every Tuesday. To access our show notes, transcripts, and courses, please check out espressopodcastproduction.com.